The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel, watching my parents celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary with 200 of their closest friends and business associates. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was probably the only person in attendance who could have afforded to rent this venue for a private party, yet I'd been relegated to the shadows like an unwelcome guest at my own family's celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad's voice boomed through the microphone as he took center stage, commanding attention with the natural authority of someone who'd spent 3 decades building a successful architectural firm. Thank you all for joining Maria and me as we celebrate 30 years of marriage, 30 years of building something beautiful together. Roberto Martinez cut an impressive figure at 58, silver-haired, distinguished in his custom tuxedo, every inch the successful businessman who designed half the commercial buildings in our city. Mom stood beside him in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, radiating the kind of polished elegance that came from years of high society events and charity galas. 30 years ago, Dad continued, his arm around Mom's waist, I married the most beautiful, intelligent, supportive woman I'd ever met. Maria has been my partner in everything, in building our business, in raising our family, in creating the life we always dreamed of. Applause rippled through the crowd. I recognized most of the faces, clients from Dad's firm, members of Mom's various charity boards, neighbors from their exclusive gated community, family friends who'd watched me grow up and subsequently watched me disappoint everyone's expectations. We've been blessed with 2 wonderful sons, Dad said, and my stomach clenched in anticipation. Carlos graduated magna cum laude from MIT and now runs the engineering division of our firm. Miguel completed his residency at Johns Hopkins and is one of the city's most promising cardiac surgeons. More applause. My brothers, both older than me, stood at tables near the front with their perfect wives and their perfect children, basking in the glow of parental approval they'd never had to question or earn. Carlos, 37, had followed exactly the path Dad had laid out for him: engineering degree, immediate employment at Martinez Architecture, rapid promotion to partner, marriage to Elena, a lawyer from an equally successful family. They had 3 children and a house in the same neighborhood where we'd grown up, completing the circle of approved life choices. Miguel, 35, had chosen medicine over architecture but had done so with such obvious success that Dad couldn't help but brag about him at every opportunity. His wife Sophia was a pediatrician, and together they represented the kind of power couple that looked good in society magazines and made parents beam with pride at dinner parties. Our sons have built lives we can be proud of, Dad continued, his voice carrying across the ballroom with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to public speaking. They've honored the Martinez name with their achievements, their integrity, and their commitment to family values. I took a larger sip of champagne, bracing myself for what I knew was coming next. The acknowledgement of my existence would be brief, diplomatic, and devastating in its faint praise. But instead, Dad paused, looking out over the crowd with a slight smile that seemed to exclude me entirely. Maria and I are grateful for the family we've built together, he said finally. We have 2 sons who make us proud every day, and we couldn't ask for anything more. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum sucking all the air out of my lungs. 2 sons. Not 3 children. 2 sons. I looked around the ballroom, wondering if anyone else had noticed the omission. Some of the older guests were glancing in my direction with expressions of confusion or pity, clearly aware that the Martinez family had a daughter who'd just been erased from existence in her father's speech. Here's to family, Dad raised his glass higher, to the people who share our values, our priorities, and our vision for the future. To those who understand that success isn't just about individual achievement, but about building something lasting and meaningful together. The toast felt like a knife between my ribs. Every word was carefully chosen to exclude me, to make it clear that while I might share their DNA, I didn't share their values or their definition of meaningful success. As the crowd raised their glasses and echoed Dad's toast, I quietly set down my champagne and made my way toward the exit. There was no point in staying for the rest of the celebration. I'd gotten the message loud and clear. Jessica, a voice called behind me as I reached the ballroom doors. I turned to see my cousin Isabella approaching, her face etched with concern. Are you leaving? The celebration seems to be for the Martinez family, I said quietly. And apparently I'm not part of that anymore. Isabella had always been the family member I was closest to, Perhaps because she'd also chosen a non-traditional path by becoming a social worker instead of pursuing the business or medical careers our family favored. But even she seemed unsure how to respond to what we'd all just witnessed. "I'm sure he didn't mean it the way it sounded," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "He meant exactly the way it sounded. I've been officially written out of the family narrative. Jessica, whatever's going on between you and your parents, this isn't the way to resolve it." "There's nothing to resolve, Isabella. They've made their position very clear." I kissed her cheek and walked out of the ballroom, through the elegant lobby of the Fairmont, and into the cool evening air where my driver was waiting with the car. "Home, Ms. Martinez?" Michael asked as he opened the door for me. "Yes, Michael. Clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. I have something I need to take care of." The drive to my penthouse took 20 minutes through the city streets. From the back seat of the Tesla, I watched the buildings I'd helped finance scroll past: the new University Medical Center, the renovated Children's Library, the affordable housing complex that provided homes for 300 families. None of these projects bore my name. I'd made all the donations anonymously, partly for tax reasons but mostly because I'd learned that visible philanthropy often created more problems than it solved. When people knew you had money, they started treating you differently, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but always differently. My family had no idea about any of it. To them, I was still just Jessica, the daughter who'd dropped out of medical school to start some vague consulting business they'd never bothered to understand. The daughter who lived modestly, drove a practical car, and refused to discuss her work in detail. They'd constructed a narrative about my life that painted me as a disappointment, a woman who'd wasted her potential and refused to settle down into the kind of conventional success they could understand and brag about. What they didn't know was that the consulting business was Phoenix Global, a technology and investment firm that I'd built from nothing into a company worth $3.8 billion. They didn't know that I employed over 5,000 people across 4 countries, or that I'd been featured on the cover of Forbes as one of the youngest female billionaires in history. They didn't know because they'd never asked the right questions, and I'd stopped trying to provide answers they didn't want to hear. In my penthouse office, I pulled up the files I'd been working on for the past 6 months. The Martinez Family Medical Wing at City General Hospital, a $75 million donation that would fund a new emergency department, trauma center, and pediatric intensive care unit. The project had been my way of honoring our family name while doing something meaningful for the community where I'd grown up. I'd planned to announce the donation at tonight's anniversary party, to surprise my parents with something that would make them proud and show them that I'd built something worth celebrating. Instead, I'd been publicly disowned by a father who declared he had no daughter. I opened my laptop and began typing. Asterisk to the Board of Directors, City General Hospital asterisk. Please be advised that the donation agreement for the Martinez Family Medical Wing will require the following modification to the naming convention. By midnight, I'd restructured the entire donation. The new medical wing would still be built, the $75 million would still save countless lives, but the signage would make very clear who had made it possible. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my brothers. Word had apparently spread about Dad's speech at the anniversary party, and the family was in damage control mode. I ignored the calls and drove to City General Hospital, where construction on the new wing was scheduled to begin next month. The groundbreaking ceremony had been planned for this afternoon, with my parents invited as guests of honor to witness the announcement of the Martinez family's generosity. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Rebecca Chin, the hospital's chief administrator, greeted me in the lobby with obvious excitement. "We're so thrilled about today's ceremony. The impact this wing will have on our community." "There's been a change to the dedication," I interrupted gently. "I need to show you the new signage design." Dr. Chen's face shifted from excitement to confusion as she reviewed the updated plans on my tablet. "Martinez Family Wing, donated by daughter Jessica Martinez," she read aloud. "I don't understand. We were expecting your parents to be the primary donors." "My parents have no daughter," I said calmly. "They made that very clear last night. So the donation will be credited accordingly." "But the amount..." "Ms. Martinez, this is a $75 million contribution. That's the largest single donation in our hospital's history." "I'm aware of the amount." Dr. Chin was staring at me like I'd announced I was from another planet. "Forgive me, but I have to ask, how is this possible? The Martinez architecture firm is successful, But this level of philanthropy. The donation isn't coming from the architecture firm. It's coming from Phoenix Global. Phoenix Global? The technology company. My technology company, yes. The recognition dawned slowly on Dr. Chen's face. You're J.M. Martinez, the founder and CEO of Phoenix Global. I am. But your parents, they think they're here for their own donation ceremony. My parents are here because they were invited to witness the announcement of a donation made in their family name. They weren't told who was making the donation because until last night I was planning to surprise them. And now they can see exactly what their daughter, the one who apparently doesn't exist, has accomplished. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, processing the family drama that had suddenly complicated what should have been a straightforward ceremony. Ms. Martinez, perhaps we should postpone the announcement until you've had time to resolve this with your family. No. The announcement proceeds as scheduled. The community needs this medical wing, and my personal family issues aren't relevant to saving lives. But if your parents don't know, then they'll learn something new about the daughter they've decided they don't have. At 2 p.m., I positioned myself in the hospital's main lobby where I could observe the ceremony without being immediately visible to my family. The event was being covered by local news crews, and several city officials were in attendance, including the mayor and 3 city council members. My parents arrived at 1:45, dressed in their finest clothes and wearing the kind of gracious expressions appropriate for philanthropic events. They were clearly expecting to be honored for their family's generosity, to bask in the recognition that came with major charitable giving. Mom looked radiant in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Dad was distinguished in his best business attire, every inch the successful architect and community leader. They moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of people accustomed to being important. Carlos and Miguel arrived shortly after, along with their wives and children. The entire Martinez family was present to witness what they assumed would be another chapter in their story of success and community leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chen began, speaking into the microphone that had been set up near the construction site. Thank you for joining us today for this historic announcement. The crowd gathered closer, including several reporters with cameras and notepads. Today marks the beginning of construction on what will be the most advanced medical facility in our region. The Martinez Family Medical Wing will include a state-of-the-art emergency department, a Level 1 trauma center, and a pediatric intensive care unit that will serve families throughout the tri-state area. Applause broke out among the gathered crowd. My parents were smiling and nodding, clearly pleased to be associated with such an important community project. This facility will save an estimated 200 lives per year and provide critical care to thousands of patients who currently have to travel hours to receive specialized treatment. More applause. The mayor stepped forward to add his comments about the importance of public-private partnerships and community investment in healthcare infrastructure. The total cost of this project is $75 million, Dr. Chen continued, representing the largest single donation in our hospital's 127-year history. I could see Dad straightening his shoulders, preparing to be recognized for this unprecedented generosity. Mom was adjusting her jewelry, getting ready for the photographs that would inevitably follow such an announcement. Before we unveil the dedication plaque, Dr. Chen said, I'd like to share some information about the remarkable woman who made this gift possible. She gestured toward a covered sign near the construction entrance, and I felt my heart rate increase as the moment of truth approached. The donor of this medical wing is someone who understands the critical importance of accessible healthcare, someone who has built a career around solving complex problems and improving lives through innovation. My parents were still smiling, still nodding, still waiting for their moment of recognition. She's the founder and CEO of Phoenix Global, one of the most successful technology companies in the world. She's been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine, recognized by the United Nations for her humanitarian work, and honored by universities around the globe for her contributions to medical technology research. I could see confusion beginning to creep across my parents' faces. This description didn't match anything they knew about their family's background or achievements. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chen said, reaching for the cord that would unveil the dedication plaque, it's my honor to introduce the donor of the Martinez Family Medical Wing, Ms. Jessica Martinez. The cloth fell away, revealing the polished bronze plaque that would mark the entrance to the new facility. Martinez Family Medical Wing. Donated by daughter Jessica Martinez. Phoenix Global Foundation. In memory of the family that raised me. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see my parents staring at the plaque like it contained words in a foreign language they couldn't understand. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Chen continued, scanning the crowd, would you like to say a few words about your gift? I stepped forward from my position in the back of the crowd, and every head turned as recognition dawned on the faces of people who'd known me since childhood but had never imagined me capable of this level of success. Thank you, Dr. Chen, I said, approaching the microphone with the calm confidence that came from addressing boardrooms full of investors and world leaders. I'm honored to support this project and this community. My parents were staring at me like I'd materialized from thin air. Carlos had gone completely pale. Miguel was looking back and forth between me and the plaque as if trying to solve a complex equation. Many of you know me as Jessica Martinez, daughter of Roberto and Maria Martinez, I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd. What you may not know is that I've spent the past 12 years building Phoenix Global into one of the world's leading technology and investment firms. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people processed this information. Our company specializes in developing medical technologies, educational platforms, and infrastructure solutions for underserved communities around the world. We employ over 5,000 people and have offices in 12 countries. The mayor was staring at me with obvious amazement. Several of the city council members were whispering to each other, clearly recognizing the name Phoenix Global from business news coverage. This medical wing represents more than just a building, I continued. It represents hope for families who currently have to travel hundreds of miles for specialized care. It represents the difference between life and death for patients who need immediate trauma intervention. It represents the future we can build when we invest in what matters most. I paused, looking directly at my parents for the first time since beginning my remarks. I chose to name this wing after the Martinez family because, despite our differences, I wanted to honor the values they instilled in me, the importance of hard work, the responsibility to give back to your community, and the belief that success means nothing if it's not used to help others. Dad was crying now, tears streaming down his face as the full magnitude of what he'd missed became clear. Mom was clutching his arm, her own eyes filling with tears as she realized that the daughter she'd dismissed had built something extraordinary while they weren't paying attention. The Martinez Family Medical Wing will open next year, I concluded. It will serve this community for generations to come, and I hope it will stand as a reminder that sometimes the most important gifts come from the most unexpected sources. As I stepped away from the microphone, the applause began slowly and built to a sustained ovation. But I was watching my family, seeing the mixture of shock, pride, and regret playing across their faces. Dr. Chen returned to the microphone. Before we conclude today's ceremony, I'd like to share one more piece of information about Ms. Martinez's generosity. I frowned, unsure what she was referring to. In addition to funding this medical wing, Ms. Martinez has been quietly supporting our hospital for the past 5 years through anonymous donations totaling over $12 million. These gifts have funded our medical scholarship program, our free clinic for uninsured patients, and our mental health services for children. The information hit my family like a physical blow. $12 million in anonymous donations spread across 5 years, while they'd been worrying about my financial stability and lack of conventional success. Ms. Martinez, Dr. Chen continued, has also endowed a research fund for pediatric cancer treatment, established a scholarship program for nursing students from low-income families, and funded the expansion of our emergency transport services to rural areas. Each revelation seemed to hit my parents harder than the last. They were learning that while they'd been disappointed in my choices, I'd been quietly transforming the healthcare landscape of our entire region. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chen concluded, it's my pleasure to present Ms. Jessica Martinez with the key to the city, in recognition of her extraordinary contributions to our community's health and welfare. The mayor stepped forward with an ornate ceremonial key, but my attention was focused on my family. Dad had sat down heavily on a nearby bench, apparently unable to process the full scope of what he'd just learned. Mom was standing beside him, one hand over her mouth, staring at me like she'd never seen me before. After the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, My parents approached me with hesitant steps. Jessica, Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, we had no idea. I know. Why didn't you tell us? I tried to. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call where you asked what I was doing with my life. But you'd already decided what my story was. Dad found his voice. The company, the donations, the success. How long? I started Phoenix Global 12 years ago with $50,000 and a laptop. We went public 5 years ago. I've been a billionaire for 3 years. The numbers seemed to stagger them. Carlos and Miguel had joined us now, both looking like they'd been hit by trucks. A billionaire? Carlos repeated. According to Forbes, yes. Though most of my wealth is tied up in company stock and charitable foundations. Miguel was shaking his head slowly. Jessica, I don't understand any of this. If you're this successful, why do you live so modestly? Why do you drive that old car? Why don't I live like you think rich people should live? Yes. Because I don't need external validation of my worth. I don't need a mansion or a sports car or designer clothes to feel successful. I have work that matters, resources to help people, and the freedom to live according to my own values. But last night, Dad said, his voice breaking, I said we had no daughter. You did. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. Were you wrong about what you said or wrong about saying it publicly? The question hung between us like a bridge none of us was sure we could cross. Both, Dad admitted. I was wrong about everything. About you, about your choices, about what success looks like. I was wrong too, Mom added. I was so focused on wanting you to have the kind of life I understood that I never tried to understand the life you were actually building. Carlos stepped forward. Jessica, I owe you an apology too. We all do. We've been treating you like a failure while you were changing the world. I wasn't trying to change the world, I said. I was just trying to build something meaningful. You did build something meaningful, Miguel said. This hospital wing alone will save thousands of lives. And the rest of your work, Dad added, the technology, the research, the philanthropy. I can't even begin to understand the scope of what you've accomplished. I looked at my family, these people who'd raised me, loved me in their complicated way, and spent years being disappointed in me without ever bothering to understand what I was actually doing with my life. So what happens now? I asked. How we learn, Mom said. We learn about your work, your life, your vision for the future. We learn to be the family you deserve instead of the family we thought you should want. That's going to take time. We have time, Dad said. If you're willing to give us another chance. Are you willing to see me as I am instead of as you think I should be? Yes, they said in unison. 6 months later, my family started joining me for monthly dinners at my penthouse. Not because they'd suddenly become different people, but because they'd finally started asking better questions about who I was and what mattered to me. Dad began consulting for Phoenix Global on sustainable architecture projects. Mom joined the board of our educational foundation. Carlos and Miguel both asked for my advice on expanding their own community service work. They were learning to see me as I was, rather than as they'd thought I should be. The Martinez Family Medical Wing opened on schedule, exactly 1 year after the groundbreaking ceremony. At the ribbon cutting, Dad gave a speech about the importance of recognizing extraordinary achievements, even when they come in unexpected forms. My daughter taught me that success isn't about meeting other people's expectations, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the crowd of patients, staff, and community leaders. It's about having the courage to build something meaningful, even when the people who should support you most don't understand your vision. He looked directly at me as he continued. Jessica didn't just donate money to build this wing. She donated her heart, her time, and her expertise to create something that will serve this community for generations. She did it quietly without recognition, because that's who she is, someone who acts on her values rather than talking about them. As we cut the ribbon together, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The simple joy of being seen and appreciated by my family for exactly who I was. The plaque by the entrance still reads, Martinez Family Medical Wing donated by daughter Jessica Martinez. But now when people ask my parents about it, they don't hesitate to explain that their daughter is an extraordinary woman who's built something remarkable while they weren't paying attention. And every time they tell that story, they make sure to mention that they're learning to be worthy of the daughter they raised, rather than expecting her to be worthy of the parents who doubted her. 2 years later, when Phoenix Global announced a $500 million initiative to build medical facilities in underserved communities worldwide, Dad called me with tears in his voice. I just saw the news coverage, he said. I'm so proud of you. Not because you're successful but because you're using that success to help people. It was the first time he'd ever been proud of me for the right reasons. And it meant everything.